Yesterday was a great day, and it was a great day not because something that we've worked so long and hard on actually was advanced, and that we care about reopening the Ex-Im Bank, but it was when a majority of people in the United States Congress stood up, led by a Republican from Tennessee, Representative Fincher, and actually said, we are not going to let hard right-wing politics get in the way of American jobs, of American manufacturing opportunity, and get in the way of moving our country forward. And so it is, I think, speaks volumes. I hope it becomes an opportunity to move other broad bipartisan pieces of legislation forward. The frustration that the American people have with the United States Congress is that things that seem to be no-brainers, things that seem to be so obvious in terms of the right kind of policy, don't get done. Don't get done here in the United States Congress. And so I am elated with what happened over in the House, but now the ball is back in our court. We've been waiting for a number of months to see House movement on this. Because of the discharge petition and because of this big vote, we now see House movement. House has done their job. It is now time for us to do our job. And so I want to just point out a couple things about that vote. It ended up being over 70% of the House of Representatives. Think about that. In this time of hard partisan fighting, we have 70% of a body agreeing to an important public policy. And what also is significant about that vote is 127 Republicans. In fact, a majority of Republicans in the House voted to support the Ex-Im Bank and reauthorize it and open it up and open up this opportunity for American manufacturers. So there can be no debate. We've been saying, along with my colleague from Washington, we've been saying all along that we believe that there was broad support in the House of Representatives to do this. I think they hadn't had a test vote in the past. Now we know. We can say with great certainty, not only is there majority support, there's supermajority support for the Export-Import Bank. And so now it's our turn. Now it's our job once again. And a few short months ago, I stood in this body working with my two great colleagues who have joined me on the floor to push back and say, look, if we believe in a trade agenda, we believe, as the three of us have voted, to support TPA. We're now evaluating and analyzing TPP. But what sense does it make to take one of the most significant and important trade tools like the Ex-Im Bank, something that levels the playing field, something that creates huge opportunity for us to be competitive against a world where these kinds of credit agencies are supported by every major economy, they're supported by every major government, and including some of the developing nations right now. What sense does it make to shut down or to restrict that tool? In what world does that make sense? And so we have been fighting this common sense, we've been making this common sense argument and fighting against things that make absolutely no sense and quite honestly, in many ways, seemed almost idiotic. And so, unfortunately, there are casualties to this failure. There are casualties to this failure in America today. American jobs have been lost. American economic opportunity has been lost, and America's position as a leading manufacturer and exporter of quality goods has been challenged. And challenged because we have sent the message that we're not open for business. We've sent the message that we no longer are going to engage with the rest of the world in terms of developing and supporting exports. That's the wrong message. I think the House yesterday sent a huge message to those foreign nationals in those countries who think that we were willing to basically abrogate the ground, give the ground away to other companies from other countries. We sent the message loud and clear that that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on our watch. But I wanted to rise today and make one final point before I ask my colleagues to join me. I want to make one final point, which is this bill is going to come over from the House of Representatives. We have been having this discussion about what can we attach it to. We need to attach it to something because the House won't take it independent, right? Isn't that what we've been hearing? That the House couldn't possibly move this without being on a so-called must-pass piece of legislation. That argument is way gone. It has been blown up by the vote yesterday in the House of Representatives. So now that we no longer have that argument, and we know we have a supermajority here, at least 64, we think probably likely 67 for the Heitkamp bill, we need to move this bill now. Let's open up the EXIM Bank. Let's tell American small businesses that we're on their side. Let's tell American manufacturers that we hear you. We hear that we can't put you in a challenging and competitive global economy and then weigh you down with 100 pounds of inactivity on the EXIM Bank. And so we're going to be talking a lot about this in the next 2-3 weeks because it's not enough to wait for the next must-pass vehicle to come through. I jokingly tell my staff I'm going to introduce a bill called the vehicle, and then I'll say, here it is. But the bill right now is ready to go. We are ready to make this happen. And so I'm very excited for the EXIM Bank, but more excited for so many of our workers, so many of our small businesses who have struggled, who have wondered, why can't Washington listen to their concern? I think that question was answered yesterday. And so I'm very excited to call on my colleague from the great state of New Hampshire to also talk about the importance of the EXIM Bank in her state. We have been promised repeatedly since the end of June that we would be given an opportunity to reopen the EXIM Bank, that we would be given the tools to get the EXIM Bank back operating and providing credit to American manufacturers. If you had told me that the end of July would come and go without putting the bank back in business, I would have said that won't happen. If you had told me that we would go through all of August and all of September without putting the bank back in business, I would not have thought that could happen. We are now at the end of October, and quite frankly, we're at the end of our patience. And so are American manufacturers, and so are American workers. And so the time to deal with reopening the bank, the time to move this legislation is right now. The patience has run thin. The promises have never materialized in terms of moving this forward. We were told in the very early stages of this, back when we began to move this issue, we were told the only way we could possibly get it through the House of Representatives was if it were put on a must-pass piece of legislation, something that, like the reauthorization of the surface transportation bill, whether we're going to have highway bills or whether we're going to put it on the debt limit or whatever it is, because the House couldn't possibly move this legislation forward without any opportunity to put it on something else. That myth has disappeared. That theory is no longer available. That argument is no longer available to anyone in this chamber. And so the question becomes, now that we know what the will of the United States Congress is, reflecting the needs of the American people, the needs of the manufacturers in this country, now that we know what that will is, now we know what the vote count is, why can't we get this done? Why can't we tell the American public that in the face of an overwhelming majority in support of a critical piece of infrastructure, trade infrastructure, and legislation, that we can't get it done, that we have to wait even more months to see the EXIM Bank back in business? And so we will be back. We will continue to talk about this issue. We will continue to raise the concerns that we have about further delay and what that further delay is costing. But we also are extremely grateful for the work that was done in the House of Representatives against great odds to move this forward, to send a message to American manufacturers that, yes, this place can function, we will listen to you, and we are moving forward on getting you this critical tool to keep people once again employed in your shops, keep people once again working to export the great American products to the global economy.